Welcome to the inner world of filmmaking. I'm your host, Tammy McGarrow. I'm an editor, podcaster, and still photographer. In this show, I will interview filmmakers in all facets of production and distribution. I'm excited to have Adam Jacobs on today, who is the creative director with Quintus Studios and will be sharing his expertise on financing and distribution strategies. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you very much, Tammy. It's very nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm curious, what does a creative director do?
Well,
what are the roles and responsibilities?
I mean, that's a very good question. I guess it depends on what industry you're working in, because it could mean lots of different things depending on the industry. But creative director at Quintus basically means that I look after all of our original content. So I work with production companies and also freelancers to develop content specifically for our AVOD channels that are found on YouTube. And these are labelled as Quintus Originals. So whether it's an established production company or whether it's a freelancer, we're open to being pitched to, and we then work very closely with those teams to get something that we think will not only work for our channels, but also that we can distribute as well, because we have a sales arm and a sales team that we sell to TV channels. So it just allows us to monetize the same piece of content over several different platforms.
Well, that's smart, and I think if more filmmakers should be thinking about those kind of things too, how to monetize on different platforms and also to promote their film and works. And I think sometimes that's forgotten while they're filming.
It's really interesting you say that, actually, because I've been working, we're actually working with two freelancers now on a film that they're doing for us that was set in Las Vegas, which we're hoping is a pilot episode for a program, but we're hoping it's going to turn into, it's a pilot episode for something that we hope is going to turn into a series. But we're doing just one pilot episode at the moment. But the great thing is that we've got over 4 million subscribers on our main channel, and it just means that I know that freelancers struggle when they're trying to get their own films in front of commissioners at TV broadcasters, and if they don't have their own presence on YouTube, they're a bit stuck. So it's great that we offer that opportunity to at least come and have a chat with us and say, look, if you feel like you can execute the film and we feel like you can do it on the kind of cost-efficient budgets that we need them to be done on, then we've got the platform and we're happy to do so. And the great thing is we offer a revenue share as well with the profits. So obviously we pay for the film, but it means then the producer and the content creator and the person who's come up with the idea will also benefit as well for the time that it lives on YouTube. So I'm really happy that this is something I've only really been doing in the last 6 months with the kind of speaking to freelancers, but we are able to give them that platform if we can find something that works for the channel. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it as well, actually.
Yeah, and it seems like YouTube is the way to go. I mean, to monetize, and that probably filmmakers really need to think about getting their presence up on YouTube.
Yeah.
However way, do you have any suggestions that if somebody wanted to get on and start building their channel, do you have any tips on that?
I mean, the thing is really interesting. So, Quintus was started, it's over a decade ago. I think it's 11 or 12 years. But so Gerrit, who is the founder of Quintus, he came from a distribution background. And when he left the company that he was working for, he took some shows with him that he was trying to sell, but to sell to TV broadcasters. And, he was getting deals in certain territories, but where he wasn't able to get deals, he was just rather than have this content set on a shelf, I'll put it up on YouTube in the territories where I can actually do so. And the reason I'm telling you this is because that's how Quintus started, and it's a very successful business now. So my advice would be that ideally, if you're a young filmmaker, you want to be doing screenings at the British Film Institute, or you'd want like a streamer to pick it up. But if you want to kind of raise your profile and get your films kind of out there and at least on a platform, I mean, it's very similar to musicians and things like Bandcamp. And back in the day, obviously MySpace, because it was always you needed a record company to kind of like pay for your demo, and then you'd try and send it to radio stations and send it to record companies. But then when MySpace came along, it's like, well, you just put it up there. And I think, it's the more the effort you put into it, you will get out of it. So I think it would just be a case of starting your own YouTube channel and a profile as a filmmaker, and then just, shooting stuff and getting it up there. And I think the more it's a bit like TikTok, I guess, is that the more content you can put up there, then the more feedback you will get. But it does take time. But I think it's like, if you've got a film and you're just like, oh, I've tried to get it into this festival and, nobody's really looking at it, nobody's accepting. It's like, well, actually, if you want eyeballs on it, then just start up your own YouTube channel.
Now, do you think that with the world of TikTok and now Shorts and Instagram, where we have to do everything under a minute, do you think our attention span is just shrinking so that people don't even watch full content anymore?
I mean, it's a generational thing, right? So,
right.
I mean, it just depends on what age you are and who you're targeting, because there's still I think you can see from the quality of unscripted content, for example, on the streamers, and people still like to watch series. They like to watch box sets, and I think also the quality of feature docs that's coming out there. There's still a massive appetite for feature docs. So I guess it depends on who you're asking. I mean, if you're asking kind of Gen Z or anyone that's in their 20s or younger, like 16 to 24, then yes, the attention span is. I mean, I've been speaking actually to some content creators recently, just so I stay relevant.
Right.
So, and just because it's good to get their point of view. And someone was saying to me, it's really about the thumb. Before on, say, like TikTok or Snap, you could, it'd be like, oh, well, they'll watch a minute or they'll watch 30 seconds. Whereas now, you just would scroll down and it's whether they like that thumbnail. So that actual image that you put to try and encourage someone to watch your kind of 30-second video is really, really important. But as I said, I just think it just depends on who you're targeting.
Right, who your target audience is.
Yeah.
Then that's how you have to gear towards it. So I guess with the younger generation, you have to do a lot of fast editing to keep them, and constant cuts to keep them interested.
Exactly that. And interesting as well, I mean, this is part of the kind of, the Quintus strategy, as I kind of alluded to earlier, is that everything on our, or majority of content on our YouTube channels is all long form. And when I say long form, I mean like at least 48 minutes. And the reason for that is because it works better for the algorithm, but also, I mean, a lot of that content where we're able to, we can, we sell it to TV broadcasters. But, we cut our content down and edit it depending on the platform that we're doing it for. So, for example, for Facebook, we'll do a version that can be anything between 8 and 12 minutes. For Snap, we'll do a version that's anything between 2 and 5 minutes. TikTok, we're kind of just exploring at the moment and whether we feel like it's worth it, but we would do something that's kind of like less than a minute. So I think it's, but there's a real expertise to that. Like, it's not just as easy to say like, oh, okay, I'll just chop this down and put it on TikTok and it's going to make me loads of money. There's a real art to doing it. So I think you also need someone that knows those platforms really well to get the most benefit from it.
Right. Yeah. I guess it's always adapting and changing to, what's going on in the world and how we need to capture people. So, and also, like we were talking about earlier, is repurposing. And sometimes you have to repurpose the content maybe for quicker, and then somebody will come and maybe spend the time, but,
Exactly.
The older generation will watch.
Exactly. But the thing is, I mean, that's the thing. Like, you have to pivot because you can't just be reliant on one revenue stream. And I think you do need to. I mean, I feel that that's kind of sometimes there's, if you look and say 10 or 15 years ago, the gatekeepers of the TV world are the commissioners, and they're very big. I used to be a commissioner, so I know that you get sent a lot of treatments and a lot of sizzles, and it takes time, but you are kind of like the gatekeepers to getting you the content on the channel. And the thing is, that just doesn't exist anymore, or it does exist, but you're not reliant on them. So this is what I've actually, if you look at a lot of content creators who've got a really strong presence on social media, whether it's on TikTok or whether it's on TikTok or YouTube, sorry,
right.
they just go and do that themselves. Like, they're not reliant on anybody else. So they're like, right, this is the content I'm going to go for. This is the audience I'm going to go for, and I'm just going to go out and do it. Whereas before it was like, oh, I've got this idea and I need to go out and shoot it, but I need the money and I need to see whether this commission likes it, and then you're waiting 6 months for an answer. Now that just does not exist anymore. So, the content creators of this world are going to be, they're the new commissioners effectively.
Right. Yeah. I was just thinking about that, like the 20-year-olds and even teenagers that are doing tutorials on programs. So
Yeah.
you're learning from a 15-year-old. They just do it. And then they evolve over time, whether they, get better equipment or something. But I mean, more power to people. I think a lot of times we hold ourselves back instead of just going for it and knowing that it'll get better over time.
Yeah, completely. And the thing is also within reason, of course, because it's always in the public domain.
Yes.
And if it's on YouTube, for example, to monetize, it needs to be ad friendly. But there's no constraints about, if you've got a passion about doing something, you can just do whatever content you want. Whereas, if you're pitching to a TV station, you have to obviously pitch up to that commission, depending on like what are they looking for at the moment. Does it fit that channel brief? Does it fit that time slot? Whereas on YouTube, you're just like, well, I want to create this piece of content. I want to create this documentary. I want to create this format, and you just put it on there. And obviously, not all of the time will it perform, but if you can find that, that kind of sweet spot, and that's the thing, like they're doing things that they absolutely love, and they're making a lot of money from it.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about commissioning and developing content? So do you have to keep up on what's going on in the world and finding interesting stories?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think it's twofold. I think it's about finding interesting stories, and I think it's also, just to keep up to date on what streamers and what commissioners are after. And, my world, although we've obviously just spoken about kind of content creators and YouTube, is that, part of, because Quintus is a split business, we're still relying on the distribution side, on, what TV broadcasters and commissioners are after. And I think also, like, it's not only finding new stories, but finding new ways to tell existing stories. So, whether that's the access, or whether that's someone who's never spoken on camera before, or whether that story has never had the real definitive version, told about it. So, just as an example, like recently, I think like within the last couple of weeks, I watched the Malaysian Airlines miniseries that was on Netflix, which like in the UK went to #1. And that story has been, it was in the news for so long, but there was a lot that I didn't know. And they pulled out some of these journalists and some of the family members. And not only was it was executed really, really well, but I think it just had that angle of what really did happen to this plane and presenting these different scenarios. And it just showed that you can be #1 on the UK and Netflix by, telling something that's not absolutely brand new. But, what I would also say is that, if you're a kind of mid-size or large production company, you will have development teams that are just, or researchers that are just actively out trying to find these kind of, stranger than fiction stories, or these crime stories that have never been told, scouring the world, because that at the moment is what's really, really hot. So yes, you absolutely have to stay on top of, what's going on in the world, but also, what commissioners want. And I'm always got my, like, I'll read news stories. There'll be something that piques my interest. And I wonder if anyone's ever done a documentary on it before. Because if they haven't, then it's like, well, okay, maybe they should.
Right. And then how do you go about finding the stories? I mean, what do you watch the news? Do you go to certain channels to find out what's going on? What's your process?
I mean, it's a mixture, really. I mean, it is partly the news. So, I mean, just as an example, actually, I saw, and I'm not going to give too much away here, just in case somebody nicks my idea, but I was on the BBC, just the BBC News website the other day, and they were actually talking about something for the Olympics, and it was this story about something that's going to be in the Olympics. And then it's been something that's been going on for like decades, but it's never been in the Olympics before. And it had this kind of person that was talking about it, and it was up from the 1980s, and he was saying, oh, this was something I did in the 80s in New York, and now it's an Olympic sport. And I was like, oh, I wonder if anything's ever been done on that before. And then I looked into it, and there's been a little bit, but there's not been that kind of comprehensive. So I actually contacted the guy who was being interviewed for the article and said, I know this is a bit of a cold call, but I'm actually quite interested in this and quite passionate about it. Do you want to have a chat? And he came back to me, and now we're having a chat. So, I think you've also got to be really bold. And if you see something that piques your interest, I mean, the first thing obviously to do is, has there been something that's done on this before? Sometimes there has been, okay. But if not, then strike while the iron's hot, and get talking to the person that's involved in it and try and get that access, or try and get that key contributor that's going to make the difference when you pitch it. And I think that is, from the development stage to the pitching stage, that access is absolutely key. And it's either, if you think how many ideas, which I again spoke about a bit earlier, that are sent to commissioners, what's really going to cut through is you've got this incredible access that nobody else has got, or whether it's a piece of IP, or whether it's a contributor or someone that's never been spoken on camera that you've got exclusivity on, that commissioner's going to be like, right, I'm going to park the rest of my afternoon and I'm going to just literally sit and watch Adam Sizzle and read his treatment, and then I'm going to go back to him and have a call. And that's hard. It is hard, but it's not impossible. But if you really, want to, pique the interest of someone that's just got hundreds of these coming to their inbox every week, then that's the thing that's going to make the difference.
So do you have twofold? One is you're going out and searching for potential projects, but also are you getting projects coming to you where people are sending you stuff? So you must be juggling multiple projects. How many projects at a time are you involved in?
I mean, not as many as you think, actually. I mean, it used to be. I mean, so when I was an exec producer at an indie, we were constantly out pitching projects to commissioners, and obviously you want to be as busy as possible. So there was a period, I think, where I had, as an exec producer, I had 4 projects at the same time running concurrently at different stages, and then overseeing those individual teams. At Quintus, we are, I send a brief out, but also I just encourage people to, and it's not me being lazy, it's just literally the best thing to do is to go onto our YouTube channel, filter it by the best videos, and you'll see the videos that are getting 10, 20 million hits. And that's the kind of thing that we want more of. We serve our existing audience. Off the back of that, I meet freelancers and speak to production companies, and they will pitch to us. But so sometimes I might have it at Quintus. I think the most I've had here is 2 or 3 running at the same time, but we're just not doing the same volume as when I was at Discovery Channel, when I was doing a lot more because we were commissioning a lot more for many, many different channels. Quintus is just not quite the size of Discovery Channel yet.
Right. Yeah. And like you were saying about Discovery Networks, you were the executive producer. Can you share some of the projects that you worked on and how you made sure they were on schedule and on budget? I mean, do you have to keep on those kind of things, and you're constantly looking at the budget and the schedule and really involved?
I mean, yeah, I'd say what's really, really interesting, actually. So, so when I was at Discovery, so I was commissioning and I was execing, and it's very different to being, and I learned this the hard way, it's very different to being an exec at a production company. And so when I was working on projects at Discovery, you're just reliant on the information that the production company gives to you. So if they say they're on budget, then they're on budget. If they say they're on schedule to deliver, they're on schedule to deliver. And it would only be when they would say to me, actually, we've got a problem here. And there have been, there were several problems. I've had things like cast members that had shot a couple of episodes, who then found out that they had a criminal record and was still and they hadn't done the correct background checks. Obviously, I'm not going to name the show or the production company, but and they had to scrap it. They had to scrap the whole, the 2 episodes of this particular character featured in. They had to scrap it and find somebody else. I had to go through the whole casting process again. So there are problems that come up, and obviously that costs time and money. But you just, as long as you've got a really good, you have to be open and honest. I think the worst thing is, and it does happen on occasion, where I wouldn't say they're not hidden from you, but that you're not told about it soon enough. And so what happens is you get quite far down the line, and then, oh, by the way, Adam, sorry, we should mention this now. We've got this problem, and it's going to mean, we're delayed. And the thing is that has a knock-on effect to, if we've got a marketing campaign behind it, and it's supposed to go out on this particular time, and we have to move it, you just can't do it really. And then it puts undue pressure on the production team, and then occasionally, it can result in a product that's not quite to the standard that you wanted. But when I was an exec at a production company, you are all over the budget and the schedule on a daily basis, because your customer is the commissioner and the network. So I saw it from two different perspectives. So to be honest with you, occasionally there were problems when I was at Discovery, but generally everything was absolutely fine, and there were niggles and you could get around it. But when you're on the other side and you're working at an indie, that's when you really feel the pressure, because just lots of things go wrong. Like team members have, breakdowns, or they can't work on a project anymore, or you deliver something and the broadcaster just hates it, even though what you deliver, you feel you've delivered to spec, and you've got to, completely rejig the whole thing. I mean, like it's a lot of pressure, and I'm glad that I've done both, because to see it from the other side, I mean, there may have been times when I didn't realise it, that I would be putting pressure on an indie, like, you must deliver this here, or I must see this rough cut today, or whatever it might be. But then on the flip side, I realised that the amount of work that goes on, and the amount of pressure that people are under, from researchers to editors to production managers, whatever, series producers, whatever it may be, like, it's tough. It's really, really tough. And it opened my eyes to how hard it is.
Yeah. It is interesting, like, going from a production company where there's high levels of stress, like you were saying. I think it helps you when you don't have as much stress, because then wow, this is like easy peasy when this stuff is going on, because you've had more intensity in other projects. And it is kind of interesting when, there's always problems. Let's just be clear. There's always problems. It's just, how do you handle the problems and then finding the solution. You're just got to be a problem solver.
I'm gonna say it's exactly that, and that's the thing. Like, you have to work together. Like, and nobody wants the problems, but they're always going to be there, as you say. And the thing is, there's no point in throwing your toys out the pram and getting annoyed about it, because that is just not going to help the situation. So I think it is just kind of banding together and like, look, this is what's happened. How collectively are we going to solve it? And you don't want to be a hard ass about it. You've just got to work with, the production company, or work with the commission to get the best result. And I'll tell you a brief story, if I may, that I delivered. I delivered an episode of a series. It was a 30-part series, and I remember it was. I think it was a couple of days before Christmas, something like Christmas 2017, and we went in with. We went into the network to discuss the cut, and we thought that what we had done for them was kind of on brief, and we were really excited. And we went in also with the person that was leading the distribution as well, and we sat in this boardroom, and they just completely ripped it apart. They hated it, and I'd say it's arguably like the worst that I felt, because we felt that we'd done a really, really good job. So the worst that I felt in my career at that point, or probably maybe ever. I don't think I've had anything. That's horrible, heart-sinking feeling. And I was really gutted. And I was gutted for me. And I was gutted for the team, because I had to then go back, and the team, what did they think? And I was like, look, they hated it. I'm sorry. Like, we're just going to have to redo the whole thing. And we didn't have to go and reshoot the whole thing, but it meant a lot of work. But ultimately, there was a lot of honesty in the room. And by the time we got to the end of the series, it was fine, and everything was being signed off, and it was okay. But that initial response, it was horrible. Like, it was really, really horrible. But it was a learning process, and it helped me, and it helped us ultimately to deliver a better show. But hearing that a couple of days before Christmas, then going into the break knowing that when we come back in January, it was we had to almost start again. It was not great.
Yeah, I mean, on that note of communication, I don't know how to say this, but it's so tough, because I feel like it's great to be transparent, right? But there's also, could there be a little bit of finesse when
Yeah,
saying what you need
of
to say.
course.
And some things are just can be a little mean
Yeah.
in saying something. So then do you have to go through a filter as you're getting all this negative information, and you have to filter it in to say, how am I going to
Yes.
communicate this to the team without destroying the team?
100%. I think it's also what's interesting is it depends who you're, before you get to that stage, I mean, it depends who you're delivering to. So it is kind of depending on, if you're delivering it to somewhere in Europe where there's, different cultures. And this is very indicative, I think, of whether you're on the phone or whether you're on email, because someone can write you an email and it just you feel like it's awful. And you're like, oh my God, they're being really, really harsh. But actually, that's just the tone of how they write an email. They're not actually, if you spoke to them on the phone about it, it would be different. But to your point, yeah, I mean, specifically out of that meeting, I wouldn't have gone back to the team and just said, listen, everybody, they hated it. You've just got to soften the blow slightly. So I think it's striking that balance between getting the point across that there's a lot of work to do and they didn't like it as much as we wanted them to, but not destroying, because it's a morale thing, right? And you're all in it together.
Yes.
So you just got to, deliver the blow in a way that you're going to not lower morale too much, but also it's like, right, everybody, come on, we can do this. I know this wasn't the result that we wanted, but look, we've done some really good stuff so far. Let's just pick it up again, and and be motivated to then carry on into the new year. I mean, on that example, it probably helped that we had it was Christmas break and we had 2 weeks off to recharge. But yeah, the communication piece is absolutely key, because they're your team. You work on these things with people for a long time,
Right.
it's multiple weeks, and you, from my perspective, you feel responsible for the team. I'm the one that's kind of out there. I'll take the blow from the commissioner, who's kind of say, we hate it, we don't like it, and then it's down to me. And if I went into that room and just said, oh guys, I'm really despondent, I've got to lift them. So.
Did you wait until after Christmas to tell them, or?
Yeah, honestly,
or did they know?
No, honestly, Terry, I can't remember, but I would say I don't think I did, because they were as eager to find out, as I was. But it also, I had people that were superior to me, and they knew that I was gutted, so it was down to them to lift me as well. So they needed to lift me, so I could then lift the team.
Yeah, I guess it's at the end of the day, what's so wonderful is you're in a team. You're not by yourself. So it affects everybody, but everybody can band together and, move forward in a new direction. But also, hopefully when you get the criticisms, you know what to fix versus we just didn't like it, do something better. It's kind of like that's a harder one to go, okay, well, great. Now we have to hope we give you what you need and want, And a lot of times people don't know. So that must be frustrating as well. I don't know if you come across that.
No, I mean, yeah, true. I mean, and I think that's, what I wouldn't want is to kind of skate over to you not being clear. Otherwise, the same thing's just going to happen again. So,
right.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it's just getting that balance right between. I mean, I'd rather have someone be really honest with me and let me hear something that I don't necessarily want to hear, but ultimately, it's just going to mean that what we then send back to them is going to be absolutely on the money and what they want, because there's just no point in kind of trying to hide behind it. Right, but yeah, I mean, that's very occasionally now, I get emails through and I have to I just can't, if I respond to them immediately, because the tone of them, I just think, well, I'm not sure that's acceptable. And I have to think right, let's just, take a moment, think about the person that sent it. Who are they? Is this just how they send it? It's one of those things. But what I would also say is I would rather get an email than not get anything at all, because one of my bugbears is radio silence. And when I say radio silence, it means when these things go into the ether and you just get ignored. And that's a real bugbear of mine. And I have to say, there will probably be people that say, well, Adam, he never used to email me back all the time. But I have to say, it's something that I pride myself on. When I was a commissioner and now at Quintus, I will go back to everybody within a decent time frame, even if it means I say to them, really busy at the moment, give me a couple of weeks. And the fact that people can't even be bothered to do that, which takes 10 seconds, I find very irritating. And I know everybody is very busy, but, you know, to have all this amazing communication and someone just doesn't respond at all, I find extremely frustrating.
I'm with you there. Totally with you there. And also what you were saying, I just think communication's key. I love what you said. Just say, I'll get back to you later.
Yeah.
And if I don't, contact me in a week if you haven't heard from me. And then that way, you could put it back on them where they're, you know, just waiting. And also, I'm the same way. I have to like sometimes read my own emails because sometimes I'm just responding and I have to go, I hope you're well, because I'm so direct that sometimes I'm like, oh God, soften that, soften that.
But it's a style thing, and the thing is that there's certain things that you like I don't like, that other people don't see a problem with. So there's something. I mean, this is me being really nitpicky now, right? But when people just send me an email and it just says my name, so it says Adam, and then they'll go into the email, they don't even greet me. And I'm like, I just don't like that. Not that they would know that I don't like it, but I just wouldn't even think of that. I have to greet someone. I mean, depending on who, someone to say hi or hello or dear sometimes, but just to put their name and then start the email, it's like, oh, I don't know. But that's just me personally.
I like that, but that's a reminder to all of us to take a step back. We're all human.
Of course.
We all have feelings, and, you know, we want to be acknowledged.
Yeah, of course.
So
don't get me wrong, like, that doesn't hurt my feelings,
important.
but it's just a preference.
Right. But it's good, but it's something that you want.
Yes.
You know?
Also, Tammy, I don't want this to turn into an Adam rant session, okay? So...
No. I just think it's good information that I think sometimes we don't always share is what we're needing and wanting. A biggest thing is like expectations. A lot of times nobody knows our expectations. So
that's true.
Sometimes we have to even be clear about that. And that could be as simple as when you're working with somebody new, how do you like to be communicated with? Do you want text? Do you want email? You know, which way do you want a phone call?
Yeah.
Some people don't like email. Just pick up the phone and call me. You know, some people say, don't call me at all. Just email me.
No,
so,
true,
you know,
true.
got to find out.
True. It's true.
So what are some financing and distribution strategies that producers may need to think about when creating their film projects?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a big question, that. I mean, you can get your film funded several different ways, and some are easier than others. I mean, I'd say all of them are quite hard. Like, it's hard to find finance for anything that you want to do. I mean, so, you know, for streamers, you know, if you can get your show on a streamer's up, generally and not always, if you get something in front of them that they want to commission, you know, they will take all rights. And I think all rights worldwide in perpetuity is a bit of a tongue twister. I'd say they're being more flexible now because they have to. Their subscriber numbers are obviously, you know, not quite what they were, and so they can't afford as much, so they have to be flexible with their rights. A lot of those with even like your Discovery channels or your Paramounts, where they have a streamer, you know, if you get some, they will take all rights in perpetuity. The great thing about that is that it means that you'll get a decent production fee, and you know that you don't have to worry about, like, you know, your film will get in front of millions of subscribers around the world. Sometimes it's better to have a distributor and also retain some of your IP. So you've got to have that balance. I mean, you know, the model that Quintus are doing at the moment, where we can put in some money ourselves, but we have to go out and look for pre-sale partners because we can't fully fund ourselves. So depending on the level of budget, you know, we'll see something that we like, we'll put in some money, and then we'll say, okay, well, we'll say to the production company, we need to go out and find a couple of TV pre-sales. So we'll go out to our network of TV commissioners and broadcast partners and see if they want to come in on the show with us. Now, the only issue with that is that the decision-making process takes a long time. So just to play with kind of easy numbers, say we've got a show that costs $100,000 per episode and we like it. And we as Quintus say, well, we can put in $15,000. Well, okay, we've still got quite a long way to go. Now, if we then go and find one broadcaster and says, oh, okay, well, I can put in, you know, $50,000. Okay, great. Then we've still got to go and find another pre-sale partner and maybe another pre-sale partner, because depending on the size of the territory, they put in different amounts of money. So what sometimes can happen is, because the decision-making process takes too long, which is not it sometimes weeks, it's sometimes months, you might need 3 pre-sale partners. So by the time you get to that 100,000 mark, you're like, great, okay, we can greenlight this and get into production. But then you go back to your first partner, who 3 months ago was like, yeah, I'm in. And they're like, oh, I'm really sorry, Adam. Actually, that money that we put aside for your project, we spent it. And then you've got to go back into the cycle. So it takes time and effort and energy, which is why I think it's so important that commissioners, come back in a timely manner, because, time is of the essence. And also, you put a lot of time and effort into developing your project. And sometimes these projects are timely, is that if you don't get a decision within a kind of certain amount of time, then that project's going to fall apart. I mean, there are, what I think is really difficult sometimes is that if your film is quite niche, and it might be like an arts film, or it might be just something that is, like a bit political, a bit current affairs, where it's not really for a commercial channel, you have to go out and finance that yourself. You won't have the benefit of a channel or a streamer. And that can be even harder, because it's like, well, who's actually going to finance it? And you might have to get like some funding, or, I mean, I know in the UK, like the BFI is very, very good at this, and supporting filmmakers. But that's where you find the drive of the filmmaker that's like, this is my passion project and I must get this made, and I will do anything I can and explore all avenues to make sure that will happen. But I think it's hard. It's I don't think it's ever been particularly easy. I mean, I think it favours, Dave, once you've got something on a channel or on a streamer, you can then obviously go back to that same commissioner and they know that what you're capable of doing, and it becomes a little bit easier. But I think as a new filmmaker, that first project is really tough. It can be really tough.
Yeah, especially if maybe nobody knows you yet.
That's the other thing.
Versus it's your third film.
That's the other thing. And I would say, like, we're very open at Quintus. That I mean, we're working with companies. We're working with a company in Africa at the moment where we never met them in person. And actually, African content tends to work well on our channel. But we did all of this over kind of call and email, where they presented something that we thought would work really well for us. But they'd never done anything for us before. But it's like, well, let's give them a chance. Let's do it. I mean, I had a freelancer come to me with an idea to this particular Vegas project. And this was somebody that I didn't know, but believed, I believed in the project, thought what the idea was good, thought it would work on the channel. And so we paid for it, and they went over to Vegas and did it. So I'm very open to giving, whether it's freelancers or production crews who never worked before, like, we have the platform. We're very open to do that, as long as it kind of fits the criteria of what works on the channel already. Then let's go for it. But I think there are, you do get blocked sometimes, because commissioners of channels and streamers like working with people they've worked with before. And I do sometimes think that you can go to like a market, or you can go to an event, and you have people up on stage that say, oh, give us a call or send us an email, our door's always open. It isn't. I mean, it's just they say that. But when if I'm just a filmmaker who they've never heard of, I could have the best idea in the world, but they'll just see my email come up and be like, oh, I've never heard of them. Why should I'll just park that.
Right.
Yeah. So, but that also comes with time. I mean, like, I've built up a network of commissioners and production contacts over several years. So it does take time, but you do need those people that are going to give you a chance in the first place.
Any tips, like if somebody were to come and pitch a project to you, any tips on how you would like to receive the pitch, or what you would like them to have?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for us, it just, it depends. I think I've probably changed actually over the years. I mean, before, I would say, send us over a deck with as much detail as possible. Well, I quickly realised that I genuinely honest, I didn't have time to read, really glossy decks and spend my days reading, 10 episode breakdowns of things. So now it's just a case of send me, if I have a meeting with a producer that I haven't spoken to before, just like, what we're after now, send me just a few top lines of ideas. And if I like that top line, then the max I would ask anyone to do is 1 or 2 or maybe 1 page of the idea overview and an episode breakdown, because we're not paying them for that. So I don't expect them to go out and do loads of work for free. And I think tape always helps. So, and it'd be like a 90-second sizzle, which might be a mood board. You can just rip it from the internet. And obviously don't go out and just, rip things from like Avatar and say, yes, we're going to be doing it exactly like James Cameron did. But obviously you have to be realistic. But it's just a flavour of what you're trying to do. I mean, sometimes it might be a character tape because you've got these amazing characters and you're like, well, actually, here's 3 minutes of these amazing characters doing their thing is enough. But, you say this to I think any commissioner would say this, that having some form of sizzle or tape is essential, because also, I mean, and I know this, that you're getting all these pitches through. So the title is really important. So say you get something in your inbox and the title, for example, would be like, the title of the show, like, okay, does that sound interesting? Yes, it does. I'm going to read the next line. Hi, Adam, I've got this idea about X, Y, and Z, and here is a sizzle that will, give you a flavour of that. And I open the sizzle and it's like 90 seconds. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll watch it. But even within that sizzle, it still has to be, I mean, it is what we were saying about earlier, like attention span. Because a commissioner will not sit and watch even a 2 or 3 minute sizzle if the first 20 seconds or even 10 seconds is not great. So I think it's really important to get those sizzles right, because you could have the best idea in the world, but if that opening 10 seconds of a sizzle is not drawing them in, they'll be like, I'm not going to watch this after 2 minutes because I'm really busy, got other things to do. So I just think, a title, like a compelling title, a compelling top line, and then a sizzle that's going to engage me or, engage commissioners in general, I think is right. The kind of paper pitch almost comes after. But again, as I said, like I would always encourage people just to give me, the bare minimum in the first place, and then if I want more, then I will ask more. But I said I'm very conscious of not asking anyone to do too much work too soon, especially when there's no paid development available.
Yeah. And then with the sizzle reel, I mean, sometimes people will go out and shoot something. Yep. And sometimes people will take things from pre-existing movies or films. Do you recommend that they maybe shoot something instead of taking, because, well, okay, great, you took something that already is done. Yeah. How do I know that that's what you're going to be doing? Any thoughts on the sizzle reel?
I think always, like if you can go out and shoot it, definitely go out and shoot it. It depends. Like if you've got this amazing character, you want to showcase that character, or a family, or whatever it might be, or someone that works in a really interesting place, or it's a precinct, go out and shoot there if you can, because said like anything that's just ripped for the net is just a mood board. It's just kind of, this is what we're aiming for. I mean, I would say sizzles, are as important as they've ever been, or more important than they've ever been, and B, the standard is really, really high. So, you don't want to send a sizzle to a streamer that's just full of, feature films or existing series. You want to actually put the effort in. I mean, like, they cost time and money, of course. And I know that, there's people that employ, companies that employ people that just do sizzle reels, because it's absolutely crucial that you get it right. And I know, like, I've spent long time working with editors on getting really good sizzle reels done. It's not something that you just can like knock up in a day. Well, you can knock it up in a day, but if you want something that's going to be really compelling, that's going to retain, that sounds silly, retain the attention of a commissioner for like 90 seconds or 2 minutes, it's got to be really, really on the money. And if they're just watching images of like, if you're doing a car, it's a car series and it's just like, ripped from the Fast and the Furious or something, that's just not going to help your cause. So I think absolutely, if you can go out and shoot it and use footage that you've shot, but you have to just you've got to manage expectations. So I would as well. It's like, it's not going to be super glossy because they might have just gone out and shot it on a very basic camera, but I can see what they're trying to get across, and I know that they've actually gone out and shot that themselves. Then I think that's more important than me seeing something from a film.
Right. Yeah. Those are good notes. You also own your own company, which is a Collab Media Consultancy. How do you manage all these things?
Well,
I mean, I'm always kind of curious with time management. Yeah. Like, how do you have your own business, plus work a full-time job, plus do whatever you're doing?
I mean, to tell you the truth, Collab is a backseat at the moment. So I'm full-time employed at Quintus, but I set it up. So what happened was I was at Woodcut Media from 2017 to 2020. And at the tail end of my time at Woodcut, I was developing my own ideas. So the things that I'm passionate about are generally things around culture, so music and art and fashion, but anything that's kind of around culture. And I was developing ideas that didn't kind of quite fit within Woodcut, which is kind of specialist factual and crime. And actually, kudos to Woodcut because they allow me to develop these ideas and go out and kind of soft pitch them. But it's not, I knew that it wasn't Woodcut's bread and butter. So when I left Woodcut in January 2020 and I set up Collab, and the reason it's called Collab is because it was just all about collaboration. So I really like working with people who are as passionate about things as I am, because I think also there's nothing worse than that. So if you're obviously sometimes everybody has to work on things that they're less passionate about. But if you can find something you're passionate about and then you find somebody else that's like, oh man, I love that idea, why don't we work on it together? I really love that. And I really enjoy collaborating with people on these things. So that was why it was set up to kind of act as, it was my development hub where I could work on things that I was passionate about and get it out there and pitch it to production companies and pitch it to broadcasters, but also to individuals to see if we could find a way that we could collaborate on it together. And that might be, it might be a brand, it might be a fashion idea that, we're trying to get a brand on. So from the end of the start of 2020, that was something that I was actively pushing. But obviously what happened in March 2020 is this little thing called COVID came along and ruined all of my plans.
Right.
I say ruined all my plans. It didn't stop me developing. So I was still working on a lot of ideas and trying to get them away. So in fact, one of the ideas that I came up with was this engineering series. I pitched it to, I was pitching to channels, but I was also pitching it to production companies. And the production company actually said, okay, we like this idea, we'll work with you on it. And that actually got picked up as a 10-part series for Quest, the channel in the UK that's owned by Discovery, and it's actively being distributed around the world now. So that was a really cool win. But there was a period from kind of 2020 until I became full-time at Quintus, where I was, that was Collab. That was, I was a development executive. I was pitching, I was, execing if I needed to, looking for opportunities, and that's actually how I, first met Dave and Lynn Coleman and started working on Arrowhead. And there's still a few projects, Arrowhead being one of them, that I'm working on now. So there's one particular passion project I'm working on, which stemmed from Collab, which I've been doing for 3.5 years, which is really, really, I hope would be really close to being greenlit. But it was one of those where it was access driven. I was speaking to the management of a particular piece of talent. I was looking for production companies to work on that I thought would really, benefit working on this with me. Found a production company. It's just taken a very, very long time. So it's still active. It's just taken this long, 3.5 years and counting, for us to actually get it off the ground. But there are a couple of ideas that are still in the background. If they happened, then obviously I'd have to try and find a way to, as you say, like juggle multiple things.
Right.
But I just, I can't leave these passion projects behind, because they're the things that like really, really excite me. And my aim, like it's a dream of mine. If I can get a passion project of mine greenlit and up and running into production, like that would really fulfill some of my creative urges.
Yes. Well, and also projects always, when I talk to anybody about a documentary that might be in the works, like filmed and going through distribution, nobody said they did it last year. No. Most of the time it's 3 to 5 years that they've been working on this. So, passion projects take time. I don't think they're ever instantaneous.
They do, 100%. Even this one that I'm working on now, it said 3.5 years and counting. It's probably a 2-year project if it goes into production. So by the time it's finished, it will be over 5 years. And I'll be nearly 50 then, but,
Yeah, but, like what they say is like, Don't worry about the age. No. You can do anything at any time.
Completely agree.
That gives me hope.
Yes, definitely.
So you were mentioning Arrowhead. You're one of the producers on there. Do you want to talk about what your responsibilities on that film is and where it's at?
This is actually a really nice story, and I'll give you the succinct version. But basically, when I set up, Collab, and I was very present on LinkedIn. So that was the other thing I did. Like, I just absolutely hammered my profile on LinkedIn. I got it up to date, was posting probably on a daily basis. And David and Lynn Coleman, who run Dow Productions, actually got in touch with me and said, all right, and we see that you're working as a development producer, development consultant. And they asked me whether I wanted to get involved in this project, which is now called Arrowhead, but it's gone through kind of several title iterations. And at the time, I knew that a lot of all of the footage at the time was in the can. I've actually, we actually subsequently went out and shot some extra. But it was working with the director and it was working with the edit team to get it into shape. So we could, we pitched it to broadcasters. I worked on the deck. I worked on a Sizzle, and it was part kind of a creative role and part a commercial role. So partly trying to find a distributor, and as I said, like trying to find a channel, but also working. I mean, we had really long cuts of like over 2 hours, and then trying to kind of whittle that down and just giving my expertise really. I'm not, it's a passion project not only for the people that are the characters in it, but also the director. So I'm not going to tell them what to do, but all I could do is watch the cut and offer suggestions on how I think it could be, be made into a better film. So it's not criticizing it. It's just like, look, if I'm watching this and it was my perspective on how we get this to sell, basically. And it's just been a really, really good journey. But I'm glad, that came out of a literally of a LinkedIn conversation that turned into me being a producer on a feature doc. So really, really excited. I mean, that's also been a long time coming. It's gone through a lot of edit. It's gone through a lot of changes. But the film we've got now, like, super, super proud of it, I must say.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I've interviewed several people from the production, and we'll be doing Lynn and David soon, cool, this month.
Hopefully they'll have some nice things to say about me as well.
Yeah. Oh God, everybody's so lovely. So it's been really nice. Yeah. As they should be.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
they are very nice. They are very
nice. So like, how does payment work? I'm always kind of curious. Like, do you get paid at the end when you sell it, or do you get something up front? Or I get it. It's every project's different. But
I don't want to go to too many specifics on Arrowhead because I think it's probably not fair to all those involved. But what I'll tell you is generally how it can work. And I'll be honest with you, like I've been a little bit stung on this. So there's probably my naivety because like I said, when I left Woodcut, I was a freelancer. And I needed work, and what didn't help, obviously, was COVID. So I needed work and I needed money. Now, the reason I tell you this is because it's all linked into your question. In that, do you get paid up front or do you get paid at the end? And there were things, again, I'm not going into specifics, but there were things that I worked on where I actually signed agreements that if this thing gets off the ground, then I would get X percentage, or I would get some kind of cut, whatever it may be. I would get paid at the end. Problem with that is that I did a lot of work with no payment up front, and sometimes that was the condition. It's like, if you want to work on this, we can't give you any upfront payment. And if I'm absolutely honest with you, I should have insisted on it. Because it was during COVID, I found it hard to walk away. And sometimes these projects were things that I thought were really, really interesting. Subsequently, what happened is I did a lot of unpaid work. It got to a certain point where that project, we were pitching it, we just couldn't get it off the ground, and I just got paid nothing. So what I then started doing was, some development where was like, if you want me to do this, I have to insist on payment up front because otherwise I'm doing it for free. Like, why should I do it for free? Just for the love of the project. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So I would say it's kind of twofold now, where you do a little bit of development work and you get paid for that development work. So, and it could be, overseeing a Sizzle. It could be writing a deck. It could be designing a deck. It could be pitching it, you're getting paid to pitch it to commissioners and distributors, but as you should be. But also at the end, if you're actively working on that film, then you get paid at the end as well. But as I said, like, it is really, really tricky. But I feel that I should have been pushed a bit harder for payment for development. And so that's why I'm very, very conscious, as I said earlier in our chat, when people are pitching me things and I'm asking them to do things that, they're not getting paid for them. I mean, even if they're a production company, they're still got to pay the people that are doing the work. So, like, I'm very conscious of doing too much free development because I just don't think it's fair. I really don't.
Well, I like what you were kind of alluding to is that there really should be a payment structure.
Yeah.
A percentage up front, maybe a percentage once it's filmed, and then maybe a percentage at the end, but at least you're getting something, because I think what happens with producers or anybody involved in documentaries really are doing it maybe for the love of the project.
Yes. Yeah, and sometimes that is the case, and sometimes you have to. I mean, you know, a couple of the passion projects that I've worked on in the last couple of years, I've done so much work, like writing, pitching, and I'm doing it off my own back because I'm so passionate about the project that I want to get it off the ground, and obviously that's off my own back. You know, if it happens, then hopefully I might get some money out of it. But ultimately, my goal is to see this thing on screen. But I think it's like, you know, if you're doing that for yourself, that's fine. I think if you're doing it for somebody else and then you're not getting paid, especially anything up front. I mean, I had also somebody that came to me that wanted me to kind of design a deck and write their treatment and then pitch it. And I charged them for it, but they actually they were a bit frustrated when they couldn't get the project off the ground because they felt they paid me all this money and then that project was dead. And I was like, but that's just the nature of the business. Like I've tried. I can't. If you've got any other ideas where we can send this, then absolutely fine. But I had obviously all the proof that I'd sent it to all of these channels. But it was just the fact that they felt they paid for something and not actually got anything out of it apart from. But you know, I'd still done the work, but they didn't get a commission. But it's like, that's just unfortunate.
Yeah, well, I think that documentaries are always a gamble. Projects can be interesting to some people and not to others, or not to the mainstream. Or I think it's always challenging because it just seems like a lot of documentaries are done on very shoestring budgets and for the love of the project, but not everybody involved, it's their project in a way. Like, it's the filmmaker's project, and then everybody that's helping is hopeful.
No,
but
of
at
course.
the end of the day, the filmmaker has a project. I think, especially if they go film it.
Yes.
So they have to be, think about that. And I also think about that in budgeting.
Absolutely.
I know that the biggest challenge in this industry is funding. And people are still trying to work that out.
Still trying to work it out. Yeah, definitely.
So do you have any last thoughts you'd like to leave us with, or anything that you want to bring up and talk about?
That's a good question. Any final thoughts? I mean, your art? Yeah, but true. I mean, I'm still very passionate about my kind of extracurricular. So I try and do some art when I'm not doing a documentary. So I have a pseudonym actually. So my art name is Courseway, and I'll give you a little plug, Tavis. So my art website is www.courseway.art, and you can find me on Instagram as well. So actually, what I've also started to do on LinkedIn is that, as well as just use LinkedIn to talk about all the great documentaries and things that Quintus is working on, I've also started putting some artwork on LinkedIn. But I don't really know if it's the right place, but I just thought it's another outlet, and it's something fun that I like to do. So
do you want to tell us about your art? What kind of art is it?
Yeah, it's very graffiti, street art based. So my favorite artist is Jean-Michel Basquiat, but I love all that kind of New York downtown scene, like the late 70s, early to mid 80s. So it's definitely, I mean, look, don't get me wrong, I'm not a graffiti writer, but it has an influence on my art, like abstract expressionism. But generally, like, I'm a big fan of Basquiat, Warhol, Keith Haring, Cause, Futura is another great artist that I like. I'm a musician as well, so I play the drums in my spare time and buy a lot of records, and take up a lot of space in my house. But I said to it, I just love surrounding myself in cultural things. So whatever it may be, I've probably got too many clothes as well, but they're just the things that I like.
So you probably don't get any sleep.
Well,
you're working all the time.
I have a 2-month-old baby now, so.
Whoa.
Yes.
Then definitely not.
No, exactly. But I've got to pay the bills and got to keep her, her safe and everything. So I've got to work on as many things as I can that's going to bring some money in.
All right. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was a delight.
Thank you very much for having me, Tabitha. I really enjoyed it. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to get out there and make a film. Reach out to your local filmmakers group to get involved and connect. Please subscribe to the show if you like it, and follow me on Instagram at Tammy Magaro. Until we meet again, what's your story?